But these pedophiles had resources. They bought an island, and they took children there.
I've seen what they do. The ritualistic behaviors, the putting girls in the suitcases.
Jay-Z reportedly leaves U.S. as Epstein files spark questions. Hey, he probably went to the same place.
Just hours ago, a single comment sent shockwaves through social media and left fans arguing late into the night. A familiar voice, known for saying what others won't, hinted that maybe the public ignored the signs for too long. Suddenly, old clips are being replayed, forgotten interviews are resurfacing, and timelines that once seemed harmless are being picked apart frame by frame. No one is saying this is fact. No one is claiming anything has been proven. But the noise is getting louder, and people are asking why these conversations keep coming back. What made this moment explode is not an accusation, but a reminder. A reminder that warnings, whispers, and uncomfortable questions were brushed aside years ago. Now, as new reports and online chatter swirl, that same reminder feels heavier than ever. Fans are shocked, critics are divided, supporters are demanding context, skeptics are demanding answers, and right in the middle of it all sits a cultural icon whose name keeps trending whether anyone likes it or not. Emotions ran high as clips spread across timelines, with some people saying this changes everything, while others insist it changes nothing at all. Group chats lit up, comment sections turned into battlegrounds, and the biggest question hanging in the air is simple but unsettling. Were people too quick to dismiss the warnings, or is this just another moment where speculation is being mistaken for truth? Either way, the conversation has officially been reignited, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. The conversation did not start with proof or documents or official statements. It started with a tone, a familiar tone that people recognized immediately, the kind of tone that makes listeners lean in because it suggests discomfort rather than certainty. D.L. Hughley did not accuse, he did not declare anything as fact. Instead, he questioned the silence, and that alone was enough to reopen doors many thought were already closed. Fans noticed that what made his words hit harder was not what he said, but when he chose to say it. Timing mattered, context mattered, and suddenly people were replaying his commentary over and over, asking themselves why it felt different this time. Online spaces shifted quickly. Posts that once would have been ignored were now being shared with captions like, "Maybe we should pay attention," or "This feels familiar." People were careful with their words, but their curiosity was obvious. No one wanted to cross the line into claiming something had happened. Instead, they framed everything as questions. Why are these stories resurfacing now? Why do the same names keep coming up in conversations about power and protection? And why does it always take years for people to feel comfortable even talking about it? The uncertainty became the fuel, and the lack of clear answers only made the speculation grow. Fans were split almost immediately. Some rushed to defend Jay-Z, pointing out his long history of philanthropy, his public image, and the absence of any proven wrongdoing. They argued that commentary and rumors should never be confused with reality. Others took a different stance, saying this was not about guilt but about accountability and transparency. They emphasized that listening does not mean believing everything. It means allowing questions to exist without shutting them down. Emotions ran high because both sides felt morally justified, and neither wanted to appear naive. What complicated everything further was the memory factor. People started pulling up old interviews, old quotes, old reactions that once seemed insignificant. Moments that were brushed off as awkward or irrelevant were now being reinterpreted through a new lens. Again, no one was saying those moments proved anything, but fans are shocked by how differently those same clips feel when watched today. It created a strange sense of unease, like rereading a familiar story and suddenly noticing details that were always there but never fully processed. D.L. Hughley's role in all of this became a focal point. He has built a reputation on blunt honesty and uncomfortable commentary, which gave his words a certain weight. Supporters argued that he was doing what many celebrities refuse to do, which is speak openly about systemic issues without protected powerful friends. Critics pushed back, saying commentary without evidence can still cause damage, even if it is framed as concern. The debate was no longer just about Jay-Z. It became about responsibility, influence, and the power of suggestion in celebrity culture. Behind the scenes, insiders and commentators added to the noise, often carefully choosing language that suggested awareness without confirmation. Phrases like "people are talking" and "questions are being raised" filled the airwaves. No one wanted legal trouble, no one wanted backlash, but everyone wanted views, clicks, and engagement. That balance between caution and sensationalism became thin. And many felt it was being tested in real time. The audience could sense it, and that tension kept them watching. Friends and associates of the people involved stayed publicly quiet, which only added another layer of intrigue. Silence can mean many things, and fans projected their own interpretations onto it. Some saw dignity and restraint. Others saw avoidance.
The lack of direct response allowed speculation to breathe, even though nothing concrete was being presented. In entertainment culture, silence rarely stops a story. More often, it feeds it. There was also a generational divide in how people reacted. Older fans tended to urge patience and perspective, reminding others how often rumors have harmed careers unfairly. Younger audiences, raised on constant information flow and online accountability, were less willing to dismiss anything outright. They argued that waiting for official confirmation often means waiting forever, and that conversations can exist without verdicts. The family was left divided in the court of public opinion, not by facts, but by philosophy. As the discourse grew, so did the emotional investment. People who had never met any of these figures felt personally connected to the outcome. Some expressed disappointment, others expressed anger at what they saw as opportunistic commentary. A few even admitted they felt confused, unsure what to believe, but unable to look away. That emotional ambiguity became the defining feature of the story. It was not about certainty, it was about discomfort. What made this moment linger was the realization that this was not a new story, just a reactivated one. The same questions had surfaced before, only to fade away. This time, however, the cultural climate felt different. Audiences were more skeptical of power and more vocal about transparency. Even so, the script remained the same in many ways. Commentary sparked debate sparked division kept the topic alive. And so the narrative continued to move forward, not with answers, but with momentum. People were no longer asking what happened. They were asking why these conversations never fully disappear. That question sat quietly beneath every post, every reaction, and every clip being reshared, setting the stage for what came next without ever needing to say it out loud. The moment D.L. Hughley's words started circulating, the internet did what it always does best. It paused, replayed, and dissected every second. People were not reacting to an accusation, because there was none. They were reacting to the feeling behind the statement, that uneasy pause that makes you wonder why something feels familiar. His tone suggested reflection, not revelation, and that distinction mattered. Yet even without direct claims, the action was immediate. Fans are shocked not because something was proven, but because the conversation itself feels unavoidable. Comment sections filled up with people saying they remembered hearing similar warnings years ago. Others pushed back, reminding everyone that rumors have a way of growing teeth when repeated enough times. Still, the energy was different this time. It wasn't loud outrage at first. It was quiet curiosity. People scrolling late at night, clicking on old clips, reading long threads they normally would skip. The idea that maybe certain voices were dismissed too quickly made people uncomfortable, and discomfort has a way of spreading. What added fuel was how carefully everything was being framed. Commentators avoided strong language. Words like allegedly, reportedly, and being discussed appeared again and again. No one wanted to cross into saying something happened. The focus stayed on perception, on why certain names repeatedly show up in conversations about power, protection, and silence. That framing allowed the story to grow without ever needing proof, which made it harder to shut down. Fans who defended Jay-Z emphasized his public record and the lack of any confirmed wrongdoing. They argued that commentary without evidence should not be given this much oxygen. Some said it felt unfair, even dangerous, to let speculation linger. On the other side, people responded that listening is not the same as condemning. They said acknowledging that conversations exist does not mean accepting them as truth. Emotions ran high because both sides believed they were standing on principle. Social media personalities added layers to the story by reacting to reactions. Some stitched clips together, showing old interviews next to recent commentary, letting viewers draw their own conclusions. Again, nothing was stated outright. The power of suggestion did the work. Fans are shocked by how persuasive silence and editing can be when placed side by side. What once seemed like unrelated moments now felt connected, even if logically they might not be. D.L. Hughley himself became part of the debate. Supporters praised him for being willing to speak on uncomfortable topics without naming names. Critics accused him of stirring the pot while hiding behind ambiguity. He did not clarify further, and that restraint only added to the intrigue. People read intention into the absence of explanation. Was he urging caution? Was he expressing regret? Or was he simply reflecting on how quickly society dismisses uncomfortable voices? No one could agree. The entertainment industry's response, or lack of one, became its own storyline. No statements, no denials, no confirmations, just quiet. Fans interpreted that quiet in different ways, depending on what they already believed. Some saw it as confidence, others saw it as strategic distance. Silence has always been a powerful tool in celebrity culture, and here it worked like a mirror, reflecting back whatever the audience brought to it. There was also a noticeable shift in how people talked about past controversies. Situations that were once brushed off as gossip were now being revisited with softer but more persistent language. Instead of saying, "This is fake," people said, "This keeps coming up." Instead of saying, "It never happened," they said, "We never talked about it properly." That subtle change in wording signaled a broader cultural shift. The family was left divided, not by facts, but by interpretation. Older fans urged patience, reminding everyone of how many careers have been damaged by speculation alone. Younger voices pushed back, saying patience often protects the powerful more than the truth. That generational tension played out across platforms, with long posts arguing about accountability versus fairness. The debate stopped being about one person and started about how society handles uncomfortable narratives. As views climbed and engagement spiked, media outlets took notice. Headlines became carefully crafted to hint without accusing. Phrases like "questions resurface" and "conversations reignited" dominated the coverage. The story fed itself, powered by curiosity rather than confirmation. People who had no strong opinion before now felt compelled to choose a side, even if that side was simply, "I don't know what to think." What stood out most was how emotional the reactions became, despite the lack of new information. Disappointment, anger, confusion, and defensiveness all appeared in equal measure. Fans are shocked by their own reactions, realizing how deeply invested they are in narratives built mostly on perception. That realization lingered, creating a tension that refused to settle. By the time the initial wave slowed, the damage, or impact, depending on perspective, was already done. The conversation was back in circulation, reshaped for a new audience. Not because something was proven, but because something was felt. And in the world of entertainment commentary, feelings often travel faster and farther than facts, leaving everyone watching closely, waiting to see how long this renewed scrutiny would last. As the discussion carried on, the focus slowly shifted from the words themselves to the environment that allowed those words to land so heavily. People began talking less about what was said and more about why it resonated now. Timing became the central theme. The public mood has changed, trust in powerful figures has thinned, and patience for silence has worn out. Fans are shocked by how quickly they moved from casual interest to deep emotional investment, even though nothing concrete had been introduced into the conversation. Online debates grew more layered. Some users began mapping timelines, not to prove anything, but to show patterns. They carefully avoided drawing conclusions, instead asking open-ended questions that invited others to speculate. Was this moment connected to larger cultural shifts? Were people finally ready to listen instead of dismiss? Or was this just another cycle of outrage destined to burn out and be forgotten? Every question led to another, and none of them required answers to keep the story alive. What intensified emotions was the role of memory. People shared personal recollections of past moments when controversial voices were laughed off or labeled unstable. Those recollections were not framed as evidence, but as reflection. The idea that society might have a habit of ignoring uncomfortable commentary until it becomes unavoidable struck a nerve. Emotions ran high as viewers debated whether that habit was rooted in protection, fear, or convenience. The family was left divided metaphorically, with no clear villain, only conflicting values. Reaction videos multiplied, each one adding a new emotional layer. Some creators spoke with visible frustration, insisting that questioning power should never be treated as betrayal. Others warned against letting suspicion replace fairness. Dialogues emerged organically in these videos, with creators reading comments aloud and responding in real time. It created a sense of community participation, as if the audience was part of an unfolding drama rather than passive. Observers. Behind the scenes, industry insiders were rumored to be watching closely. Again, no confirmation surfaced, but that did not stop people from speculating about private conversations happening far from the public eye. Fans are shocked by how quickly imagined scenarios can feel real when fueled by repetition. Every silence was interpreted as a signal. Every unrelated event was folded into the narrative, even when logic suggested restraint. Friends of the figures involved avoided engagement, which only deepened curiosity. Supporters interpreted this as a refusal to legitimize rumors. Skeptics saw it as avoidance. Neither interpretation could be proven, yet both circulated widely. The lack of clarity became the most powerful element of the story, allowing everyone to project their own beliefs onto it without resistance.
The emotional tone of the discourse shifted again when people began discussing consequences, not legal consequences, but cultural ones. What happens when trust erodes, even without proof? What happens when admiration coexists with doubt? Viewers admitted feeling conflicted, unsure whether to defend someone they admire or question a system they distrusted. That inner conflict played out publicly, with long posts describing confusion rather than certainty. Media coverage mirrored that uncertainty. Articles were written with cautious language, focusing on reactions instead of claims. Headlines referenced conversations, not accusations. Still, the repetition of names and themes created an atmosphere that felt heavy. Fans are shocked by how perception alone can reshape a public image, even temporarily. Some worried about fairness. Others argued that discomfort is necessary for growth. A particularly intense moment came when commentators compared this situation to past instances where stories were dismissed early, only to resurface years later with new context. These comparisons were framed carefully, emphasizing that history does not repeat itself exactly, but it often rhymes. That phrase circulated widely, becoming a shorthand for the entire discussion. It captured the sense that something familiar was happening again, even if no one could define it precisely. The audience reaction revealed as much about society as it did about the individuals involved. People were less interested in definitive answers and more invested in the process of questioning. That shift marked a change in how celebrity narratives function. Instead of waiting for conclusions, viewers engaged with ambiguity itself. Emotions ran high because ambiguity offers no closure, only tension. As days passed, the conversation showed no sign of fading. It evolved, becoming more introspective and less reactive. People asked themselves why they felt compelled to take sides, why silence felt louder than words, and why commentary without accusation could still feel threatening. Those questions lingered, creating a slow burn rather than a flash of outrage. By this point, the story had transformed. It was no longer just about a comment or a reaction. It had become a reflection of collective unease about power, influence, and accountability. Fans are shocked to realize how deeply these themes resonate, even when wrapped in speculation. The drama persisted not because of what was known, but because of what remained unresolved, keeping attention locked and emotion suspended, as the narrative continued forward without offering relief. As the narrative kept unfolding, a new layer of tension emerged that had little to do with names and everything to do with trust. People started questioning not just individuals, but the systems around them. Conversations drifted toward how fame, loyalty, and influence can blur lines over time. Fans are shocked by how quickly admiration can coexist with suspicion, even when no facts have changed. It became clear that this was no longer about a single moment, but about a pattern of how stories are received, ignored, and later revisited. Some commentators began focusing on the emotional impact rather than the details. They talked about how unsettling it feels when familiar figures are suddenly placed inside uncomfortable conversations. They emphasized that this feeling does not require proof to exist. It exists because trust is emotional before it is logical. Emotions ran high as viewers admitted that they felt torn between wanting to protect what they loved and wanting to question what they feared. That internal struggle became one of the most relatable aspects of the entire discussion. Dialogues online grew more personal. Instead of arguing facts, people shared feelings. One person would say they felt disappointed even without evidence, while another would respond that disappointment itself felt unfair. These exchanges revealed how deeply personal celebrity culture has become. The family was left divided symbolically, not by events, but by emotional reactions that could not be reconciled easily. No one
Wanted to be wrong, yet no one felt fully comfortable being certain. The idea of selective listening became a recurring theme. People pointed out how some voices are amplified while others are dismissed, depending on who is speaking and who is being spoken about. This was framed carefully, not as an accusation, but as an observation. Fans are shocked by how often credibility is assigned based on popularity rather than consistency. That realization added weight to the original commentary, making it feel less like gossip and more like a cultural critique. At the same time, pushback intensified. Critics warned that allowing speculation to flourish under the guise of discussion could create a dangerous precedent. They argued that ambiguity can be just as harmful as false claims if it lingers long enough. Debates erupted over responsibility, not legal responsibility, but moral responsibility in media spaces. Who is accountable when conversations spiral? Is it the speaker, the audience, or the platforms that reward engagement above all else? The role of algorithms quietly entered the conversation.
People noted how quickly emotionally charged content spreads compared to calm analysis. Clips were boosted, reactions were recommended, and suddenly the narrative felt inescapable. Fans are shocked by how little control they feel over what they see next, as if the story is choosing them rather than the other way around. That sense of inevitability added to the drama, making disengagement feel almost impossible. Some creators attempted to slow things down by urging viewers to separate curiosity from conclusion. They reminded audiences that discussion does not equal judgment. Yet even these calming voices were pulled into the larger current. Their videos became part of the discourse, quoted and reposted, sometimes stripped of nuance. The attempt to restore balance paradoxically fed the same machine they were critiquing. As attention grew, so did the emotional stakes for fans who felt personally connected to the outcome. Longtime supporters expressed fatigue, saying they were tired of seeing their favorites dragged into endless cycles of doubt. Others said discomfort was a small price to pay for broader awareness. The family was left divided again, this time along lines of emotional endurance. How much uncertainty is too much? How long can admiration survive unanswered questions? Another twist came when people began questioning their own role as consumers. Some admitted they were drawn to the story despite knowing it offered no resolution. They reflected on why ambiguity feels compelling, why tension holds attention better than clarity. Fans are shocked to recognize themselves in this pattern, realizing that engagement can exist independently of belief. That self-awareness added a meta layer to the drama, turning the lens inward. Through all of this, the original point remained intact. No claims, no confirmations, just commentary about commentary. Yet the emotional weight continued to grow, suggesting that the absence of facts does not equal the absence of impact. People talked about how reputations can be affected by association alone, even temporarily, and whether that is fair or simply inevitable in a hyper-connected culture. The discussion also exposed differing expectations of public figures. Some believe visibility comes with scrutiny as an unavoidable cost. Others argue that scrutiny should require substance. This philosophical divide fueled endless threads and debates, each side convinced of its moral clarity. Emotions ran high because the argument was no longer about one person, but about what society expects from those it elevates. By this stage, the narrative felt self-sustaining. It no longer needed new input to survive. Reactions fed reactions, reflections fed reflections. Fans are shocked by how stories can evolve without progression, looping through the same themes while growing heavier each time. The unresolved nature of it all became the hook, the thing that kept people watching even as they claimed to be tired of it. As the momentum carried forward, one thing became clear. This was not about uncovering truth or debunking rumors. It was about sitting with uncertainty and deciding what to do with it, whether to ignore it, question it, or let it quietly reshape perception. And that decision, deeply personal and endlessly debated, ensured that the drama would not fade quietly, but continue to linger, waiting for the next spark to push it even further. As the discussion reached its most intense phase, something unexpected happened. Instead of escalating into louder accusations or sharper divisions, the tone began to soften in strange ways. People did not suddenly agree, but they slowed down. Exhaustion set in. After days of arguing, defending, questioning, and rewatching the same clips, many viewers started asking a different kind of question. Not what happened, but why this kind of moment keeps repeating.
Itself in public life. That shift marked a quiet turning point in the conversation. Some fans admitted they felt drained by the constant cycle of speculation. They said they were tired of feeling forced to pick sides when no clear facts existed. Others responded that fatigue itself was part of the problem, that weariness often leads to silence, and silence allows powerful systems to remain untouched. Emotions ran high again, but this time the tension felt heavier and slower, like a long-held breath rather than a sudden outburst. Commentators began reflecting on how quickly narratives form and how hard they are to undo once they take shape. They pointed out that even when stories are framed as commentary, the emotional impact can linger long after attention fades. Fans are shocked by how memory works in these moments. Even if nothing is proven, the association remains in the back of the mind, quietly reshaping perception in ways that are difficult to measure or reverse. There was also a noticeable increase in self-awareness across platforms. Viewers started calling out sensational edits and exaggerated reactions, questioning whether engagement was being prioritized over responsibility. Some creators acknowledged this openly, admitting they felt torn between covering what people were talking about and avoiding unnecessary harm. That honesty resonated with audiences who were experiencing the same conflict internally. The idea of fairness returned to the center of the discussion. What does fairness look like in an age where attention moves faster than verification? Is it fair to revisit old conversations simply because the cultural mood has changed? Or is it unfair not to revisit them when past dismissals may have been rooted in bias or discomfort? The family was left divided once more, not by loyalty to a person, but by loyalty to different definitions of justice.
Over time, the intensity of the reactions began to level out. The loudest voices were no longer dominating the conversation. Instead, quieter reflections gained traction. People wrote about the importance of holding space for questions without turning them into conclusions. They emphasized that commentary should invite thought, not dictate belief. Fans are shocked by how rare that balance feels in modern discourse, and how refreshing it can be when achieved, even briefly. Some viewers turned the focus inward, asking why they were so emotionally affected by a story built largely on perception. They acknowledged how deeply celebrity narratives intertwine with personal identity, values, and trust. When those narratives are challenged, even indirectly, it can feel personal. Recognizing that helped some people step back, while others leaned in further, determined to examine their reactions more closely. The broader cultural implications became harder to ignore. This moment was increasingly seen as part of a larger pattern where society struggles to talk about power without idolizing or demonizing it. Nuance often gets lost, replaced by extremes that feel more satisfying in the short term. Emotions ran high because nuance demands patience, and patience is scarce in spaces designed for instant reaction. Eventually, the pace of the conversation slowed, not because it was resolved, but because it had reached a natural saturation point. Most arguments had been made, most perspectives had been shared. What remained was a lingering sense of unease and reflection. Fans are shocked to realize that sometimes the most impactful stories are the ones that end without answers, forcing audiences to sit with ambiguity rather than move on comfortably. As attention shifted elsewhere, this discussion did not disappear completely. It settled into the background, ready to resurface the next time a similar comment, clip, or moment reignited it. That persistence became part of its meaning. Not a scandal, not a revelation, but a recurring reminder of how conversations evolve when they are postponed instead of addressed. In the end, what stood out was not any single statement or reaction, but the collective experience of navigating uncertainty together. People argued, reflected, defended, questioned, and sometimes listened. No verdict was reached, and none was required for the moment to matter. The drama lay in the process, in the way emotions moved through communities, exposing fears, values, and contradictions along the way. The story closed not with clarity, but with awareness. Awareness that commentary can carry weight even without claims. Awareness that silence can be interpreted in countless ways. And awareness that audiences are not just consumers of narratives, but participants in shaping how those narratives live and linger. That understanding did not bring closure, but it did bring perspective, leaving viewers with something more complex than answers, a deeper sense of how fragile and powerful public conversation can be when it revolves around figures.
Symbolize far more than themselves. Now it's your turn to weigh in. After hearing all of this, how do you really feel about the conversations surrounding Jay-Z and the way these discussions keep resurfacing? Do you think people are simply reacting to rumors, or do you believe there is value in revisiting uncomfortable questions, even when no clear answers exist? This is not about deciding guilt or innocence. It's about how we, as an audience, choose to respond when commentary challenges what we think we know. Fans are shocked by how divided opinions have become, and that's exactly why your voice matters here. Some viewers feel these discussions are necessary for accountability, while others feel they unfairly damage reputations through implication alone. Where do you stand? Are these conversations a sign of cultural growth, or are they proof that speculation spreads faster than truth? Emotions ran high throughout this story, and your perspective adds another important layer to the debate. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and be honest. Do you think society ignored certain voices too quickly in the past? Or do you believe this is just another cycle of online outrage that will fade away? Read what others are saying, respond respectfully, and let's keep this discussion thoughtful rather than toxic. The family was left divided in public opinion, and your comment could help shape where the conversation goes next. If you found this breakdown engaging, make sure you hit the like button to support the channel. It helps this video reach more people who are interested in deeper commentary rather than quick judgments. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next upload, where we continue exploring the stories everyone is talking about, but few are breaking down carefully. Most importantly, stay curious. Question what you hear, but also question how you react. Conversations like this don't end with one video, and neither does our coverage. Stay tuned, stay thoughtful, and we'll see you in the next one.